Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the Best Adventure Podcast. I'm Brian Sherwood, and with me today is Miss Alison Proffit. She is an entrepreneur and a rock climber, and she's got one very awesome story to share with us today. Stick around. All right, we're live. Allison, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do and how you're, living your best adventure and all that.
For sure. So my name's Allison Proffit. I'm actually a small business owner here in Northern Colorado. My clients are all over the world, really. I'm a business coach, and I believe that joy is the best business strategy. So I'm originally from the Pennsylvania area, and I had a really big adventure that started, I would say, in January 2017. The way that I got to professionally doing what I'm doing now, I worked in HR forever, and so I always loved people and wanted to really help them have a really great experience in the workplace. That's really what fueled me in terms of that. And I wanted to start my own business, which, as is an adventure in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
And I decided I wanted to really have my own business doing corporate coaching and consulting. And in that world, it's important to have a certification. And so I went and got a certificate thinking I was just going to get the piece of paper so I could go do executive coaching. And 3 weeks after my program ended, which totally transformed my life, I was going to get a piece of paper and it cracked my soul wide open. I realized I didn't really know who I was. I was so focused on my career. I had been in long-term relationships since I was 16 years old. So I never really knew who I was as Allison, a woman that has her own interests. And so I really started to discover who I was through this program. And 3 weeks after I finished it, I actually ended up getting fired unexpectedly.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, super fun. And, sometimes I kind of say I didn't really know what it was like to be on the other side of the table, so to speak, in those situations. Right. And there's a story behind why I got let go. It was a rumor, and I kind of got caught in the middle of some other things that were happening that impacted our whole department. And it really was a catalyst for the start of a big adventure. I, with my now ex-husband, moved across the country from Pennsylvania to California, and we did a work exchange program. Okay. And in exchange for room and board, we lived with this lady and cared for her 2 horses and her 2 dogs and her property. She traveled a lot for work, and the vision that he and I had was really to just have an adventure,
right?
Just try something new. He wasn't really happy. I was thinking maybe California could be a good place to start off a coaching business. They're kind of new agey there and very open and progressive. So I thought it could be a really fun thing for me in terms of exploring that business. And he wanted to work in the cannabis industry, which is what led us to California and then subsequently here to Colorado. Right. And the experience was supposed to be for 4 months, and probably 4 weeks in, we realized it wasn't really going to be a fit.
Why was that?
Moving in with a stranger who you've only met over a Zoom call and had one phone call with is a little bit of a risk, I guess you could say. And there were just some expectations that she had that were not effectively communicated beforehand. And one of them being that she didn't want us both to take a shower every day. Being that we were shoveling horse crap for 3 hours a day, it seemed unreasonable that she wanted us to jump in the pool instead of taking a shower every day. So that was one of many things. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting mindset right there.
Exactly. And there's just some other stories that you just can't make up. So I always say I could write a book from the 6 weeks that we spent in California. But yeah, that was kind of that was the deal breaker. We were just like, we got to figure out something else to do.
Yeah.
And so that led us here to Colorado. And the business I have now, I started in October 2019. So the big adventure that happened between that time frame is between January 2017 and October 2019. I'd moved 9 times. I'd lost 4 jobs. I tried to start my business 4 times,
Wow.
changed careers twice, and
Wow.
went through a divorce. And in the mix of all that, there was some mental health challenges that I experienced because that's a lot of
That's
change.
a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of change. And so, yeah, there's so many adventures even within that little adventure. But I know when we initially talked and you were talking about an adventure podcast, the first thing that came to my mind was rock climbing.
Okay.
And so I'd done a little bit of indoor climbing back in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And my ex wasn't really into it. And so I ended up also deciding I wasn't into it because it's a partner sport.
Right,
so.
right. Well, so coming from, my point of view, like living here, rock climbing is a big deal.
Yes.
What is it like in Pennsylvania? Is it like common? Is it more of a rare, like niche thing?
I didn't know anybody that did it.
Okay.
But there was a climbing gym near where we used to go to one of those big wholesale stores. So kind of like a Costco, but it's called BJ's Wholesale Club. So I had seen it and I was like, what is a rock climbing gym? I'd not really ever heard of it. And so we went to it and tried it out and I fell in love immediately.
It's easy to do.
It really is. And we went out and bought gear and he ended up not really liking it as much. And so the rock climbing gym was like 45 minutes away from where we lived. And so it just wasn't something that was easy to stay involved in. Plus I was working all the time and that's really, my focus was really my career at that particular point. So, there's not a big climbing culture in my opinion, comparative to here in Colorado. I just went back to Pennsylvania to visit family not too long ago, and it was going to be an extended visit to help with some aging parents stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I go to the climbing gym like 3 days a week, and then I love to climb outdoors too. That's something I'm newly getting into. And the nearest climbing, there's 3 of them in like a 15-minute drive from where I live here in Fort Collins. And back in Pennsylvania, the closest gym, there's 3 of them, but they're all 45-minute drives away.
Oh, wow.
So, and there isn't tons of close outdoor climbing to where I grew up. So it's just interesting because I do think there's probably great climbing in Pennsylvania. It's a very rocky state.
Okay. I've never been there. So I don't know.
Like when people say like mountain biking and hiking, when I think of it coming from Pennsylvania, it's like it's big rocks everywhere and it's not fun. Like hiking there is really, you're doing a lot of scrambling all the time. Whereas here it's like, even a mountain bike ride, it's like you're going through meandering fields. That's an option.
A lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. So coming here to Colorado totally opened up a whole new world in terms of just outdoor adventuring. It's just beautiful here all the time.
Yeah.
Even when it's snowy out, it's still beautiful.
Right. And the snow doesn't last all that long. And no matter where you're at, like if you're in Fort Collins, you're 10, 15 minutes away from just being away from everybody and everything.
That's so beautiful. I say that all the time. Our backyard is just literally gorgeous nature.
Yeah,
and
biggest, most
be,
beautiful playground you could ever ask for.
It's the best. The Poudre Canyon is one of my soul places. I just love driving up through there and just stopping and looking at the river. I've done some climbing up in the canyon. And it's just a special, special place. You can't describe it. You just have to experience it to know it and understand it. And I got into rock climbing, and I think it's such a parallel to life. You have to just be present. It doesn't have to be parallel to life, but I feel that life is best lived when you are really present in the moment. That's a lot of what I teach in my business, is really helping people find joy as the best business strategy. And joy, if you think about it, is only experienced when we're in the moment or reflecting on really powerful moments in our life.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though with rock climbing, there's this, you're pushing yourself. It's uncomfortable. I mean, you have a fear response. And how many times in our life are we afraid to jump in and do something? But if you don't jump in and do it and try it, how are you going to know?
Right.
And the idea that when you're rock climbing, especially outdoor climbing, it's true with indoor climbing too, but with outdoor climbing, you might be feeling your hand around on the rock, just trying to find something that you can grab on, something that's like, oh, this is going to hold me, and feeling around where you could put your foot. And there's these tiny little chips of rock, just tiny thing. And you're like, there's no way that's going to hold me.
Right.
And you really have to move forward from a place of trusting and just having faith that you're actually not supposed to stand on that little tiny piece. You're just supposed to step on it to continue moving. Life isn't static. Life is this adventure. You're supposed to be experiencing it. And it's not about the destination. It is about the journey. I mean, if we just were staying still forever, I mean, sure, that there's beauty in stillness. I definitely feel that way. But if you just stay stuck in the exact place that you're at, you're missing opportunity. You're missing other experiences. You're missing the adventure.
I could not agree more. That's a very beautiful way of looking at things. And I say it all the time to a lot of friends and family. I think that nature is the best therapist that there is. So, I mean, you were talking earlier about mental health issues, and then you kind of segued naturally into rock climbing right after that. And I can't help but draw the conclusion that rock climbing was probably pretty powerful for your mental health. Am I right?
Oh, for sure. I think that there is this. It does create a stillness because you really do have to just be right there, and
you can't rock climb with other things on your mind. You can't do it.
You can't. I mean, you can try, but it's going to be harder, and you are likely going to fall off the wall safely.
Yeah, well, hopefully safely, as long as you did everything right.
Yeah, and I think when you bring up the topic of mental health, the truth is that not only do you have to clear your mind, but there's also a lot of trusting your body. So when you are, especially when you're learning how to rock climb, there is a lot of uncertainty. There is this fear response that naturally just kicks in because you've never done it before, and you're like, I might fall.
Right, and until you actually do fall, that's the most terrifying part of climbing. Yeah. And then you fall, and that wasn't all that bad.
Right, exactly. So. And so when you think about mental health, I mean, working in HR for so many years, mental health in the workplace was always something that was kind of a soapbox of mine, if you will. But mental health challenges that it tends to be, we're not in the moment. We're thinking about the past, or we're anxious about the future, right? We're worrying, or we're judging, or we're shaming our past, or we're overthinking what's going to happen next, which is future oriented. So you're not being present. And with rock climbing, like we've said, there's such a requirement to be present.
Yes.
And there is this therapeutic thing. And also, you're not doing it by yourself. I think that's the other therapeutic part of it. There has to be some trust with the person that you're climbing with, the person on the ground that's
climbing with ropes and using belay systems.
Yeah. I don't really do bouldering because I actually don't feel very safe falling.
That's what I do. I do bouldering. So when you say you have to have somebody else, I have to say I disagree, because I find an incredible amount of peace in being out on the rocks by myself.
Yeah, that's true.
And knowing, like, if I fall and if I break my leg, that's on me. Yeah. And now I have to find a way to fix this situation, which luckily has never happened. But, and I find a tremendous amount of power in having that mentality.
I would agree. I mean, I think for me, there's obviously some work there. Like, I'm afraid of falling off of the rock, because I don't feel safe in falling. And I think there is something to be said about learning how to fall, and I'm just not there yet.
Okay.
Part of that is I'm a small business owner and I don't really feel like I have a safety net. So if I get hurt, there's a part of me that's like, it's not safe for me to get injured, and I don't trust myself falling. So it's a goal, though. It's definitely a goal. I would like to do some bouldering eventually. I think it requires a different amount of strength, which I think you build up to it. So, and some people love bouldering. I actually really like the community aspect that climbing brings to me, but I totally see the beauty of bouldering.
Yeah.
That's actually the part about rope climbing that I like, is that I really love the connection with other people. But when I am on the wall, even though I know there's like somebody on the ground and they're keeping me safe, there is this incredible, thing about like knowing that I'm held by somebody else, but I've got myself. And when I'm on the wall, I do feel very alone, right?
Yeah.
It's like a duality thing.
Yeah, there is. And I really like that you bring that up, because so many people might kind of ignore that. But you are, when you're on the wall, your movements are your movements, and that's you and then your body and your mind. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you always do have that in the back of your mind, that you knowing that my team is here. Mm-hmm. And I do have people who care about me and are going to watch out for me. Yeah,
exactly. And I think in the aspect that you were talking about with bouldering, I mean, even if you are out there in nature by yourself, like, you're actually not by yourself, right? You're surrounded by energy. Everything is energy. And I mean, we could go the spiritual route with that too. I mean, you're with God or whatever your higher source is, and you're always held. Right. Like, that's sort of the parallel, I think. Like, the rock will always hold you. And if you fall, then you just have information, and then you can try it again with more information.
Absolutely.
And it's such a parallel, right?
One of those, that whole no such thing as failure mindset. Yes. It's only growth, and it's only experience, and it's only knowledge.
I'm a fan of acronyms. I have an acronym for the word fail. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, I do.
Fail is just the first attempt in learning.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I love that one too. When I was trying to learn how to snowboard, sitting on the bunny hill with tears streaming behind my goggles, with the instructor sitting also on the bunny slope with me, and I was really struggling standing up on the snowboard and kind of wiggling down, and the whole rest of the people in the lesson with me, because it was a group lesson, they were all already at the bottom of the hill, and I was just sitting on the hill just crying. And the instructor was like, "It's okay." And I was like, "I know it's okay. I know it's okay." And I was just sharing with her the acronym for fail, and she loved it so much. She waved down one of her fellow instructors as they were going down. "You have to hear this acronym. It's amazing. We need to integrate it into our classes." So yeah, first attempt in learning.
So why were you crying?
Why was I crying? I was crying because I knew that it was a matter of my mind and body making the connection of what the movement was to keep me balanced and not fall.
So you were in your own head about not being able to keep your balance on the board, and
a little bit in my head, but I was frustrated because I knew once my mind and body kind of figured out the positioning to have that center of gravity, like to find the center so that I wouldn't fall, that I would be fine. And it was taking me forever to get it. And so, you're in that squat position when you're learning. And so my thighs were burning and everybody was at the bottom. So I was like, they're all down there and they're waiting for me, which they weren't. That was only like a microsecond of a thought. It was more just, I knew I would get it, and it just needed more time, and the lesson was over.
Oh.
And this woman was amazingly kind. And then we made it to the bottom of the hill, but she was going down backwards holding my hands.
How nice.
While I was like shimmying down. It was probably the most pathetic sight, but I was crying because I was frustrated that I wasn't getting it.
And how do you do now?
Oh, I actually never did it again.
Oh, really? Why not?
I didn't enjoy it
Okay.
as much as I thought I would. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, maybe I would enjoy it once I figured it out. But yeah, I don't know. And also, it's inexpensive. Like
It
snow
really is.
sports are
It
expensive.
really
So
is. Yeah.
I
I
I
used to do
prefer
it.
like I can just go rock climbing and I already have all the gear
Right.
and
And
I
I'm
don't
right
have to pay an
there.
entrance fee.
I don't have to drive, 4 hours to
Right.
get there. Yeah,
Exactly.
all that. I get that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I used to snowboard, and it on opposite of what you had, it came really naturally to me. But I grew up skateboarding,
Mm.
so I had a skateboard sponsorship when I was a teenager, and then I ended up snowboarding, and I haven't been in a long, long time because I had a serious injury snowboarding, and so that kind of kept it in my head. And I mean, there's a part of me that wants to get back on there, wants to get back on the board and go down and just try it again,
Yeah.
regardless of the injury, which I've done a couple times, but I haven't been in over like a decade now.
What's
So,
stopping you from trying again?
well, exactly what you said, money and time.
Yeah.
To get a whole weekend of snowboarding, I could do a month worth of everything else that I
Right.
love to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's basically what it is.
I think that's I mean, our priorities change, right? Like what's
Yeah.
important to us changes. I used to
Absolutely.
love going on cruises when I lived back east, and I haven't done that since 2017. And there's a part of me that's like, oh man, that'd be really fun to go and do that again. But now I'm like, oh, give me a tent and throw me in the woods.
Right.
Like, I'm a happy
Yeah.
chick,
Yeah. That's the same thing. Like I wouldn't do well on a cruise. I just wouldn't. The whole time I'd just be there. Like, why am I on this freaking boat in the water when I could be on a mountain? Why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah, the thing about cruising that I really loved, I loved just being in the middle of the ocean
Okay.
and just looking out at the expansiveness of
There
the sea.
is a certain piece to that.
And knowing that nobody knows what's under our feet because you can't see it,
Right.
and you don't know where the shoreline is, and
Right.
there's something about this feeling so incredibly inconsequential, that just being out on the open ocean, even though, I mean, you're on a ship with
Right.
lots of people, but when you're sitting on your balcony and you can't really hear much of anything, especially late at night where it's so dark and you can see all the stars and all those things, but you can get the same kind of thing in the mountains.
Absolutely.
I think the thing that I grew up on the East Coast, so the ocean wasn't all too far away. And I used to be like, oh man, I really want to live by the ocean. But the thing about the ocean is shoreline is very limited, whereas the mountains, I mean, there's so many times where I'm just going on a scenic drive and like I don't pass any cars. There's no people. It's crazy. You can find so many places in the mountains, whether you're hiking or just going for a scenic drive, where you don't run into people.
Right.
And so definitely mountains.
Yeah. And then when you're out hiking, it seems limitless and endless when you're out there and you get to the top of a mountain and you look out and you're like, oh my goodness, look at all these other mountains.
Yes.
And you go, I want to go to that spot over there.
Yeah.
How do I get there?
Yeah.
And, and in your mind, you're not getting there.
Right.
Because that thing that's, it looks like you could throw a rock to it, that's like 5 miles away.
Yeah.
Down a valley, up a valley, down a valley, up a valley. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's my favorite part of being in the mountains, is the limitless expanse of adventure that I see right in front of my eyes the whole time.
Yeah. It's so gorgeous.
Right.
So gorgeous. Yeah, and I just think too, you can't describe, I feel like Colorado, it has to be experienced. I mean, I'm sure that's true of other things, but I'll show family back east pictures and they'll be like, oh, that's so pretty. I'm like, no, but you don't understand.
Yeah, you don't, you see the image, but you're not feeling the wind. You're not smelling that pine. You're not feeling that feeling in your soul as you stand on top of that mountain and look at that vista.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a soul thing.
Yeah.
It's like you just have to experience it.
Absolutely. I tell people that all the time.
Yeah.
So, I had a friend who he told his boss down in Texas about Colorado, and then his boss came here and apparently spent his entire time here on the east side of the state, and then went back down to Texas and complained. He's like, I went to Colorado, I didn't see a single mountain. And so
it is true. Yes,
yeah.
it does. Yes.
There's multiple different areas of our state that are wholly different places.
Right. Yeah. We're not talking about the plains. We're talking more about
the west side,
the Front Range, the west side,
the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to anybody who lives out on the plains. I'm sure it's got its appeal. It's not my appeal.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. It's something about just the topography of the Front Range and Western Colorado. And, I mean, I just recently went to Moab for the first time about a month ago, and that's really pretty in a very different way.
Right.
But I mean, Colorado just has this really unique beauty. And I've not been to all the places, so I can't say it's the best. Like I'd love to get up to Montana and
me too.
Just kind of the northern parts of Wyoming, I've heard are gorgeous, and I've not made it there, but so many adventures ahead.
There's so many different ones to go off and explore. Like I grew up in the South.
Okay.
I'm a Southern boy. I was born in New Orleans. I lived in Louisiana. We grew up in an RV, and so we spent a lot of time traveling when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We ended up settling here, and then I went off into the military, and I was stationed in the South. I was stationed in North Carolina and South Carolina, Mississippi, and so I'm well versed in what the South is. The North, I've been north of the Mason-Dixon line one time in my life.
Okay.
One time to go to Minneapolis.
Okay.
Wouldn't recommend it. I'm not a city guy by any means, and Minneapolis was just empty.
Yeah.
It has no soul.
Okay.
But then again, when you're talking about you come from New Orleans, that's a hard place to beat with, how that city feels about itself, and the actual character and uniqueness of that city.
Right.
You don't see that anywhere else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think, it's so interesting. I do a podcast also, and we, our first 2 episodes were about home. And really, when I talk about home, it's sort of about like a sense of place.
Yeah.
And I think what you're describing is this pride, right? I mean, even just kind of looking about the space that we're in, you've got some art on your wall that says New Orleans on it, and you can see the jazz musicians and the street lamp, and there's this there's like a sense of place when you think of New Orleans. Like people feel like people identify with it.
Yes. Whereas,
some places you don't hear people being super prideful, but that doesn't mean that place doesn't have soul. It's just, does it resonate with you? And I mean, I'm from the Philadelphia area, and there's a lot of pride in that.
Oh yeah,
in that
that's
area.
What I've always heard. I've never been there, but
and for me, it never felt like my place.
Right.
And so Fort Collins, in particular, I felt like I was home.
Same here.
And I've left twice amongst all the different moves. I've actually, in total, as I sit here now, moved 11 times since 2017. Okay. It was just, by the time I started my business, it was just 9.
Right.
But my life kind of settled in a little bit more once I found my place in my business. So, there's a lot of things about like when you identify, like what does a sense of place mean for you as a person? And it's not just your location. I think it's like an inside job.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out for yourself inside your own soul and what you feel like your purpose is, and then finding where that's not aligned in all the different areas of your life. And it's going to change and shift. And when you are really being conscious about the where do you feel at home in all the areas of your life, in your relationships, in your health and wellness, in your spirituality, in your physical location, with your money. I mean, it's like in all those different places. And then I think when you kind of are doing that process, where you are when you start finding that, I think that's where that home feeling comes from. Like, I feel like I was finding myself and finally found myself when we arrived here in Fort Collins. And I kind of think that's why I feel so drawn to it.
Right.
Because it's like where I found myself, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. I feel the exact same way. I've been to 7 different countries. I've been to almost every state, specifically the ones in the South. And nothing else ever felt like home. Nowhere. Nowhere else I've ever been has ever felt like home like Colorado does.
Yeah.
It's just something about it. I don't know. I think it's the mountains. It has to be because, I mean, I've been to other mountains and they just don't have the same appeal to me. Maybe it's because of, just specifically our geographic location. It feels like the mountains are like your big brother just always looking over for you and just like keeping you safe. Like you there's a certain comfort in being in town and knowing that you could just look to the west and there's my peace right there. It's right there. It's just waiting for me to come and visit anytime I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction and peace out of that.
Do you feel like where do you feel like you were in your own personal evolutionary journey when you came to Colorado? If you don't mind me asking.
The first time I came to Colorado?
Or just like
I was very young.
When you came here and felt that feeling of like it's home.
That was I would probably have to say when I was about 12 or 13 years old is when that really hit really hard.
Like you felt it here.
Yes, but because my parents were never outdoors people. They were sheriffs and they were from the South and from New Orleans, and we all lived in an RV, a family of 5, and eventually though. My mom became a real estate agent and sold a house to a nice couple that took me and my little brother out to the mountains for the first time, like actually in the mountains, like away from people, and let us. I remember we got there and I was like, "What do we do?" And they just looked at me like, "Just go play, just go do whatever you want to do." And we started running around and playing in a mountain. It hit like a freaking ton of bricks. Just that's where I want to be for the rest of my life. I want to be here in these mountains.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like there's a little correlation to like freedom in some sense.
Absolutely.
Because of that experience for you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And so later on, when I was in high school and, we saw 9/11 happen and I was in ROTC at the time, I dropped out of school and I spent 4 to 5 days a week running up the mountains, up and down, just getting in shape because I knew, that I needed to go to war now.
Right.
And so I did that with a friend of mine, and we both ended up, at certain times, separate times, joining the Navy and the Marine Corps. We did that whole adventure, and when I was done with that, in 2007, I moved to South Carolina, where my older brother lives. And I loved it there. It's a beautiful place. The beach is awesome. Hilton Head Island is gorgeous. A bit too fancy for me, though. Nothing against people who live there. It's a beautiful place. It really is. And I was riding motorcycles and working as a service rider for a sports motorsports company. So I was testing, jet skis and boats and motorcycles and all that. I was having a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like a lot of playing. Yeah.
Yeah, and. Just in the back of my mind, Colorado was always calling me home. So I left and I spent a couple weeks in Tennessee, and Colorado just kept calling me. So I came back and I never looked back again. Every time I leave here, I can't wait to come home.
Yeah, that is so true for me too. And it's interesting because I never lived more than 50 miles from where I was born.
Okay.
And then we moved to California. So
that's a big move.
Really big deal.
That's real big.
And again, moved in with some strange lady that we met.
Right. Now, when you did that, had you? I understand that there's a lot of ranches and stuff in Pennsylvania. Did you have experience doing that kind of work that you were going to end up doing in California?
Not really. I went to like Girl Scout horse camp.
Okay, so the entire move was just a giant leap into a foreign life.
A radical adventure.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
and
so cool.
It was temporary, right?
Right.
And I'm not afraid of hard work. I mean, I was I would like play in the garden with my dad when I was little, and I'd done some like service projects to do like repair work down in Appalachia when I was in high school. So, I mean, like getting dirty and doing labor type work isn't something that was scary. Actually, I feel like I was more accustomed to it than my ex-husband was.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually afraid of the horses when we got there.
Oh,
So
no way.
yeah, it was really interesting. It actually was pretty cool. We got the opportunity to work with the trainer of the horses. She would come in and she would take them through different drills, and she would do their grooming and stuff like that. So we got the opportunity to do a little bit of training with her. And it was really neat to see my ex's relationship with the horses change. And because he didn't understand I understand energy. And so I was like, they're reading your energy. They know that you're afraid.
The horses very specifically do that.
And they are responding to that. So that's why they're, coming towards you, because they know you're afraid of them. Mm-hmm. And so you can't be that way.
Right.
You're going to get hurt.
Right. There's actually a group down in Loveland called Hearts for Horses mm-hmm. that I was put in touch with through the Veterans Affairs, that they help veterans with PTSD get over a lot of their problems by taking them around horses, because horses very specifically have that ability to latch onto your emotions.
Yeah.
And they kind of help you learn who you are.
Right. Yeah. Have you done that program? I've heard really good things about it.
I want to. Yeah. It doesn't work with my work schedule right now.
Okay.
Trying to make that happen.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, I don't remember what I was going to say about all of that, but Colorado. So I never lived more than 50 miles from where I was born, and I had a job. I worked at Comcast, and I was an HR business partner. And so part of my client group that I supported was in the Denver Tech Center area. And so I traveled out here a couple of times for work. And I remember the very first time that I, arrived at Denver International Airport. It was nighttime, and I had a rental car, and then I was driving down to my hotel on 470. And so you know how that road is like, it's pretty empty.
Yeah.
Which is very weird, because on the East Coast, like when you're on a highway, like that's never
especially
empty.
One that leads directly to a major airport. It's really weird that there's never anybody on that.
Yeah. So I was driving on this highway from the airport. It was nighttime. There was no cars around. It's not very lit up.
Right.
And I just remember seeing so many stars. And I was like, am I like out in the wilderness? I mean, you're not. I was like 10 minutes from DIA. It was crazy to me how many stars there were. I felt like I was in a different world. And again, this was just like a Wednesday night, you know, again. And then in the morning when I woke up and I opened my window at the hotel room and saw the mountains, I was like, what is this place?
That whole new world that you've never even thought you would see.
Exactly. And my brother, he used to do a lot of work in the Boulder area. And so when I was sharing this experience with him, he was like, oh man, I know, isn't it gorgeous out there? He's like, I would live there. They're still back in Pennsylvania. I like to say, like, nobody in my family has left the bubble. But I never would have, like, pictured myself moving here.
Right.
And so, I mean, even Fort Collins, I had never been to Fort Collins. It was a very, like, sight unseen type of thing. My ex had just researched areas of Colorado. And so it was like Colorado Springs, Longmont, or Fort Collins. So that was his short list.
You made the right choice.
I totally did. Yeah. Yeah. We actually lived in Niwot when we first
Niwot's awesome. I like it there.
Yeah. It's a cute little town, but it's a little town. Like I'm from a little town. And so I was like, I don't want to be in a little town. So yeah, it's really interesting. Like I remember the feeling I felt just driving down 470 at night and all the stars. And I was like, this is crazy. This is a magical place. I remember feeling that it was magical. Right. So maybe it wasn't that I found myself here that called me home. Like, I just think everybody has a place.
Yeah.
And so if you are out there and you're listening to this and you're like, what are these people talking about? Like, it's just the town I live in. you might not be living where you belong.
Right.
And so get out there and have the adventure and just try different things on for size.
Put yourself in an uncomfortable position.
Exactly.
Go do something difficult that you've never done before that scares the hell out of you.
Totally.
Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll change your life. It really will.
Totally.
Every time.
Yeah. I mean, so many adventures. We could just do a whole entire show and I could just tell you about all my adventures and you could talk about your adventures. Yeah. Like, I mean, just between two humans, we could probably have so many stories. Like I moved up to Idaho, again, sight unseen. I'd never been there before. I moved up there to live with a friend and we were going to start a business. This was in August of 2019. And I moved there and I grieved for Colorado. Right. I just was like, and I also feel like I was sold a false bill of goods because she was like, Idaho's just like Colorado. We have mountains and rivers. And I got there and I was like, everything's brown. Right. And these are not mountains. These are mounds. Right. Granted, I understand like there are other parts, but we were near the Boise area. And so, yeah, I just remember being like, this is not Colorado. I want to go home.
Right. So, and I think people who visit Colorado, their perception of it largely depends on what time of year that they visit Colorado. Because, Colorado is very brown and dead for a large portion of the year, too. If it wasn't for our pine trees, you would never see anything green. Yeah. But then, like come spring, like here in like, maybe 2 or 3 more weeks, Colorado is just going to be popping with color and life everywhere. And that's when, you really want to be here. You really want to see the mountains.
I don't know. There's something different about the brown here in Colorado than the brown in Boise, Idaho. Right. It could be the experiences I had while I was there that have tainted my perspective of Idaho. So sending out Idaho love to all of you folks out there in the potato state.
Right. We all need those potatoes. Keep farming them.
I mean, I love French fries. So.
Right. Yeah. Who doesn't? Right.
And a loaded baked potato. Who doesn't love that?
Oh, yeah. So, you talked a lot about your experience with seeing the stars and on your way out of Denver. What about the first time you went camping in Colorado, like on a mountain? What was that like for you?
So I have to tell you, Brian, I don't feel like I actually ever camped until my first camping experience in Colorado. Yeah. So I grew up camping. We camped mostly in like a pop-up camper, and I camped with Girl Scouts. But, when I was young, I didn't have the same appreciation.
Right, of course.
So the first camping trip I went on, I had actually lived here. So I moved here with my ex in June 2017. And he wasn't into outdoor stuff. So we didn't really... we did a little hiking, but like never camping. And this was in, I would say, October of 2018. So I wasn't with him anymore. And I was dating somebody. I wouldn't say dating. I'd gone on a couple dates. Okay. And then this person we were talking about camping. I was like, oh man, like I can't wait to camp here in Colorado. Like I haven't camped in a really, really long time. Like I love camping. And it had been forever since I had done it. And he was like, what do you mean? How long have you been in Colorado? What do you mean you haven't camped yet? And I was like, I didn't have any gear. Because when we left Pennsylvania, we literally sold everything. And not that I really had a lot of outdoor gear at that time, but I didn't have anything. And again, all those moves. Every time I moved, I let go of more and more stuff. So I am a minimalist for sure. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a big truck. I have a Toyota Corolla hatchback. So it's like very little stuff. So anyways, he was like, this is not okay. He's like, you need to go camping. He's like, I'm going to take you camping. And so he planned the whole thing. He was like, all you need to do is bring your clothes. Like he brought the food, he had all the gear, and he planned where we were going. We went up to Strawberry Park Hot Springs up in Steamboat Springs. Right. And so not only were we, and it was in the fall, so the aspens were all golden. Oh, yeah. So obviously, just even in the daytime, just driving up there was really gorgeous. And that hot springs is really, really pretty. It is clothing optional at night, but that I did not do clothing optional. But I just remember like where our campsite was located was right next to the creek. So I remember I laid with my head outside of the tent for probably like 45 minutes, laying on my back, looking out at the gazillion stars. Like you could see the Milky Way, you could hear this creek. I mean, I was weeping.
It's a whole different experience, isn't it?
And also we had like soaked in the hot springs for a few hours. So that's just so relaxing. You know, you have all those beautiful minerals that you're just soaking in. And it's, I mean, yeah, I'll never forget that experience. And that person for like giving me that experience. I mean, it was just so special, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, Colorado is awesome. Like I can close my eyes and picture all the things that I love about Colorado in this moment. I know this is a podcast, so you guys can't see. I literally was just closing my eyes and thinking of like the places, and it's very emotional. It makes me weepy when I think about just all of the expansive beauty that we have around us in this world. And most people are just too busy rushing around, trying to get more, have more, do more, be more. And
too stuck in their own head and their own problems to really just take a step out.
Exactly.
Just take a step back and just appreciate life.
And I think that's even true in the outdoor world. I mean, it's you don't have to have all the technical gear. Like all my stuff is hand-me-down stuff that my brother sent home with me after a visit home, you know. And he's like, "Oh, this is leftover
You don't
stuff."
always have to have a destination in mind either. Like when it's like, well, where are we gonna go? We're just gonna go. We're just gonna go to the west.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, what are we gonna do? Whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
We're just going to go. I'm going to take the dog and we're going to stop somewhere in the woods and why not? We'll just let Scout lead the way.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I take the dog out and Scout just kind of shows me where she wants to go. So we go where she wants to go. And, whatever.
She's so
fun.
Sweet, by the way. Again, this is a podcast. It's not on video, but this Scout, who I just met, I think has fallen in love with me. Her head is on my lap and I'm just petting her, and she's just so happy.
Because we do this out of my home, and my dog is my emotional support dog.
Yeah.
So, and she's very good at it.
Yeah, so. she's. I'm feeling her vibes.
Mm-hmm. She's a sweetheart. She becomes a whole different beast in the mountains, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She's nonstop, 100 miles an hour. She'd go. She'll run down the trail and stop and look back at you like, "Hey, man, are you coming? There's stuff over here. Let's go see it."
Come and see all this awesome stuff.
Yeah, so
that's how I feel about Colorado. Yeah. Come and see all this awesome stuff.
Yes, I know it. But if you're not going to treat nature right, then don't
That's
dare
true.
freaking come into my mountains if you're not going to treat it right.
Yeah, definitely being a
because we all know what it feels like to go camping and have the beautiful opportunities and experiences that we were talking about. But we also know what it feels like to pull up to a campsite and step out and just onto broken glass and shotgun shells, and the trees are shot to shit and everything's broken.
Yeah. People leaving their toilet paper everywhere. It's gross.
Toilet paper, mattresses. Oh my goodness. You don't even know half the things that I have found in these mountains. I'm not even joking. We have actually found 2, not 1, but 2 live hand grenades.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
In the mountains.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, people. Leave your weapons at home. Come out and enjoy the nature.
Yeah.
And
laundry machines, refrigerators, all this. Like, why are you even bringing this out to the mountains? We have actual dumps in town. Just bring them there. So that kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah, leave no trace, people. Be a good steward.
Right, love your nature, and it'll love you back.
For sure.
Right. So anything else you would like to talk about? Would you like to promote your business at all?
I mean, I'll never say no to that.
Well, go ahead. Do it. Do it.
So I have a couple of different pieces. My business is called Profit Coach, Proffit. I say it's spelled like making money, but 2 F's because more is better.
I like that.
I'm a business coach, so I have to be a little,
a little clever.
A little clever like that. And I work with entrepreneurs that want to do their business in a soul-aligned way. And the idea of them using joy as their strategy resonates with them. So I do some work around mindset coaching and then also consulting and training on different areas of sales, marketing, community building, and then also the operations components of your business, like what's the bookkeeping system I should use and things like that. Because as a small business owner, you have to wear all the hats.
Yeah, you do.
And that can be very difficult for people. And so because of my HR background and the fact that I tried to start my business 4 other times, and then worked in a sales position at Constant Contact that gave me a ton of sales and marketing experience, I kind of feel like I've collected all the different pieces, and I'm a teacher at heart. So I like to not just help people get over the head stuff that gets in our way, because we're our own worst enemy, people.
Yes, we are.
But also to equip them and teach them how to do the things, but in a way that feels very aligned and joyful.
Right.
And then I also run a virtual summit every year called the Soulful Entrepreneur Summit, which also includes a community, and we do a number of free events throughout the year to really educate, inspire, and connect soulful entrepreneurs to each other.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So talk to me more about, how you said running a business that is joy aligned and your soul aligned. What does that really mean? Like if I wanted to get coaching from you, what exactly am I looking at?
So one of the things that I like to help people with is everything really starts with our values. And so if you think about joy being the goal, which I think if you spoke to any human, usually they say they want to be happy.
Right.
Like that's ultimately their goal.
Oh,
and so joy is the end game. It's not really just the business strategy, it's the strategy. So if you think about joy as the destination, your values really are the coordinate points to that joy. And your values are always shifting. And so you have to actually evaluate those regularly. And there's a lot of people that have never done values work, but the values are the coordinate points to the joy. And then your intuition is like the GPS to keep you on track as to like whether or not you're aligned.
Okay.
I feel like our work as humans is to get back to our truth. Your intuition really is a great guidepost, but we have to unlearn a lot of things to begin learning how to listen to our intuition.
Right.
For a lot of us, it's been conditioned out of us. For people that have had traumatic experiences, like I actually recently experienced a sexual assault trauma, and so
sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And like when you have an experience like that, it disorients you, and you have to really understand what that is doing to your values and your intuition, because your brain is kind of like in a protection mode. And let's face it, we've all gone through trauma. Like life is traumatizing in different ways, right? And it's not about comparing each other's trauma it's not about comparing your trauma to somebody else's trauma, but knowing and understanding who you are and what your truth is, not compared to anybody else, because that's their journey. It's not your journey. Right. So it's really helping to uncover those things. Again, going back to my HR days, I mean, that's really what you do in HR.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out the pieces of the story. You're trying to figure out where the communication breakdowns have happened, because really at the root of most problems is a communication breakdown with ourselves, with God, with the other people in our lives. And so it's really helping you get back to that, helping you see why it's important that you trust it, because everybody has a purpose that's been planted in their heart. And often people that are small business owners are trying to get to that, right? Yeah. They're trying to create a business that makes an impact, not just on themselves, on the world.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to do a business just to make money, there's something that's missing for you.
Yes.
And so helping you figure that out, I may or may not be the right person for that, because people that are just very money driven tend to not be people that resonate working with me, which is cool.
Right.
It's like they self-select out.
Yeah, that's always helpful, right?
Yeah, so really helping you understand those pieces and giving you, I have a lot of different tools in my tool belt. I use a really powerful assessment tool called the Energy Leadership Assessment,
Okay.
which is from the coaching school that I got certified through. And that model really changed my life in a lot of different ways. And I have seen the power of it in helping other people understand it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question effectively.
You answered it more effectively than I think anybody else would have.
Okay.
So how did you really get into that, though? I mean, I know you came from HR. I'm assuming you spent a lot of time in cubicles and offices. That's when I hear HR, I hear corporate, nonsense. Basically, it's in my mind. It's nonsense. I can't work at a desk. Just can't do it. I run an e-commerce business, and it drives me insane. I have to leave like every couple hours and just go play.
Yeah.
So you come from HR after years and years of doing it, right?
15.
What inspired you to do what you're doing
right now?
Yes.
So, like I said, I wanted to start my own coaching and consulting practice working in the corporate world. And when I lost my HR job back in 2017, I kind of was like, screw the corporate world, right? And I started to go to networking events. And that was really where I fell in love with small business owners.
Okay.
I was like, whoa, these people are rad. They're super passionate about what they're doing.
Right.
They have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
I know a lot of things about the things that they're doing, because when you work in HR, at least the kind of HR person I was, I really wanted to know all the pieces of the business so that no matter what department came to me, I would be able to serve them and help that manager. Plus, you're hiring for all the different functions.
Right.
So you just learn about a lot of things when you're doing that. And so I started to go to networking events, and I fell in love with the small business owners and just the idea of these people that were creating businesses out of their passion. And I initially pivoted the business that I was really trying to start then was really like a leadership coach for small business owners. But the truth is, I didn't know anything about small business ownership.
Right.
I knew a lot about business, but in the capacity of like having departments and, other people that help you do all the things.
Right.
So I'm talking to a small business owner and I'm like, well, you just need that. And they're like, I have to do all the things and serve the clients or make the product or whatever it is that their business was. And so I didn't really get it. So that was, I would say, my first iteration of trying to start a business. And then I had an evolutionary process of thinking like, well, what else do I know? Like, and that's the thing, like if you are an entrepreneur or you want to be an entrepreneur, and you can't quite figure it out, there is something about trying, like keep trying different things, right? Fail, first attempt in learning. So I kind of tried to go in the direction of coaching HR people. And I created a program called The Heart of the Matter with the H and the R and the word hearts capitalized. So helping HR people get reconnected to the heart of why they got into that field. Because Scout, so sweet. She's feeling my heart as I'm talking about this program. When you get into HR, you tend to do it for very heart-centered reasons. A lot of people do anyways. And then you get in it and you realize there's just some things that are not very resonant, and you become jaded and you become hardened. And so if you work at a company out there and you're interacting with your HR people, give them some love, because it's a hard job. It's a really hard career because you can't make friends at work, and because you're HR,
right?
You're like an island,
right?
And so I did that, and then the other business I tried to start was a life and relationship coaching business, which was after my divorce, and I was doing a ton of work on myself, and just felt really inspired about helping women understand when they're in dysfunctional relationships or on the other side of a dysfunctional relationship, helping them understand and getting reconnected with themselves and worth and things of that nature. So I tried to start my business a bunch of times, not very successfully because I was missing a bunch of things. I was missing a bunch of skills. So when I left my marriage, I got a job at Constant Contact, which is a digital marketing company, and I got a position in sales, which was hilarious to me because when somebody I was connected with was like, you should think about maybe getting a job in sales. I think you'd be good at it. I was like, that's stupid. Sales is gross. Like, I don't want to work in sales. And she was like, I think you'd be really good at it. You're very effortless in communicating. You've got a lot of business acumen. And she was like, I work at Constant Contact. And I thought, oh, sweet. Like, I wasn't successful in my other businesses because I didn't really know how to close sales. If you want to have a business, you need three things. You need to know what you're selling and how much you want to charge for it. You need to know how to talk about it. And then you need a way to collect money. Notice what I didn't say in there. You don't need a website necessarily. Maybe you do. Like if you're selling a product, maybe. But you could also, there's other ways to sell the product. So you have to understand how to talk about it. So I was really excited to learn how to sell. And that job was very transformational for me because my job was to talk to small business owners every single day and hear about their story and why they were passionate about what they were doing and how they were trying to connect with their audience and why they wanted to connect with their audience and what they wanted to say to their audience and why it was so important to them and where their story was and all of that. And often what I was finding is they were more focused on the product or the service, and they weren't bringing themselves into the story. Okay. And so what was interesting is I always had really long sales calls, but I had a really high retention rate. So when I would close a sale, even though those clients didn't stay connected with me because then they would get kind of passed on to the customer service team, I had really high retention rate because I created a relationship and a connection to the company via the conversation I had with these people. Okay. And so you have to include your story. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's so passionate? Like what brings you passion about it? And not just like what problem were you trying to solve, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people are ashamed of putting their whole story out there. Right. But the thing is that when we put our story out there, it creates a resonance.
Helps you connect to other people.
It helps you connect to other people. And we see ourselves in other people's stories. Mm-hmm. And when we see other people being vulnerable and sharing about themselves, it almost gives you permission and courage and inspiration to kind of say, oh, they're doing it. Maybe I could try that on for size 2. Maybe just a little bit, baby steps, right? Like, I'm not saying like, go out there and tell everybody that you had a sexual assault trauma. I mean, like, that's my journey because that's a piece of my story that is actually forming some of what I'm doing and some of the things that are going to become important in my own business and helping business owners who navigate that trauma because that's something that became hard for me in the time following, right? So it really is about looking at your own experience and saying, how does this inform what I'm doing right now?
Yes.
And not talking about the other things and not talking about the things that are future, but give yourself permission to change and shift. So when I started Profit Coach, this is a very long path to get to
no, you're fine.
The answer to your
you're
question.
Fine.
But the thing of it is that when I started Profit Coach, it was on the heels of, I told you I moved to Idaho, and it was to start a business with a friend of mine, and it fell apart 4 weeks after I moved there. She actually had reignited a romantic relationship with our primary client and didn't want to talk about the boundaries related to what could and could not exist in that relationship. So I turned around and left. I had $200 to my name. I didn't have a website. I didn't have business cards. I asked myself, what do I know how to sell? And the answer to that question was, I knew that I could tell people how to create an aligned marketing strategy around their email marketing. Because that's literally what my job was at Constant Contact. Okay. It wasn't just like, buy this product. It was, tell me about your business. I want to know more about you. let's talk about your marketing strategy and how you can integrate yourself into it. What I didn't realize is I was already doing the work I'm doing in Profit Coach at Constant Contact. And so I started my business initially just doing email marketing strategy consulting, and then also helping people set up their Constant Contact account, because I'm a reseller. So that's a little piece of my business still. And I was profitable in my first month.
Oh.
And people were
Not very many people can say that.
People were like, how did you do that? Because remember, I didn't have a web. Part of it was I had $200.
Right.
I was like, got to go make some cash, and I don't want to go get a job. I literally had a fire. So there is something about people that are trying to start a business and like working on the side, like in their full-time job. Try to quit your job. See what kind of fire you get. It's a little different.
Right.
Don't wait till you have a safety net. I mean, maybe that's irresponsible, but
it could be. But it could be exactly what it is that you need to set yourself free, which is ultimately the goal of an entrepreneur, isn't it?
Yes. Think about what would happen if you didn't have the safety net.
Right.
How would that drive you? And again, not saying that's like the most responsible thing to do, but one of my shadows that I've worked through is I am irresponsible. And I worked with a really great coach who asked me what gifts I had received. Gifts. It's like, I feel like in podcasting, that's like a word that doesn't necessarily come across. Not gift, like the little thing that you send on like a Facebook post comment, but a gift. The gift that I received from my irresponsibility was I took risks. I did things that other people might not have done. I made decisions that helped me learn big things.
Yeah.
I moved across the country to shovel horse shit.
Yeah.
And live with a stranger.
Right.
There wasn't much of a plan. And I've moved to a place of like intuition's the plan. So that month after I started my business, people were like, what are you doing? And it made me realize that the thing that changed this fifth time that I tried to start my business was that I understood how to have a sales conversation.
Okay.
That's literally the thing that changed.
That it's that simple. You got better at having conversations.
I knew how to have a sales conversation.
Wow.
And all I was doing was I was executing the sales conversation in the way that I learned how to do it at Constant Contact, which is not proprietary.
Right.
I mean, I've looked around and I've not invested a whole lot of time and energy in learning other people's sales models, right? People are like, oh, Grant Cardone, or, like, did you read this person? I'm like, no, I don't need to. Like, I'm teaching the thing that I learned in the way that I learned it and how I've integrated it. And the thing is that a lot of times people are like, oh, sales is a mindset game, which is true. But there is a science and an art to a sales conversation. Right. And you do have to be disconnected from the outcome of the sale, because sales is like, if I asked you to fill in the blank of like, what is sales really?
Sales is, I would say, I guess, just it's giving somebody what they need for a price that they're willing to pay for it.
What's at the heart of that, though?
Desire, maybe. Desire for a good or a service.
So what makes you feel connected to buying a particular good or service?
For me, it's about how it will enhance my life.
Okay. So there's some sort of relationship. There's some sort of connection, right? Connection is kind of the word that I think is what people don't realize is behind their decision to buy something, right? There's a connection that you feel in some way. And in the small business world, and even in the big business world, connection happens through conversations.
Okay.
Right?
So it's less of a connection to a product and more of a connection to a brand or a message or a way that you feel about a certain thing, or how it helps you, how it makes you feel once you've had it.
Exactly.
Like why somebody would always buy like the North Face, because they're connected to that name through that brand, through their experiences with it.
Exactly. Think about it this way. So Constant Contact is a digital marketing company. They sell a product. They also have a service now, but primarily what we were selling was the Constant Contact product, which is tied to the digital marketing tools,
Okay.
email marketing, social media scheduling, Google ads, things like that. It is not an accident that they also have a huge sales team that makes phone calls to people to sell the product.
Okay.
Does this make sense?
Yeah.
It's a digital marketing tool that has human beings on a sales team making phone calls to people that sign up online for a free trial to get their hands into the product, which that you can totally do.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, what's Constant Contact? Please email me because I can help you with that. And I'm a small business owner, so supporting small business is good.
Get your email address out there.
Yeah, Allison, ALISON, at Proffit Coach, PROFFIT coach.com. And just let me know that you heard me on this show and tell me you want to learn about Constant Contact. But the thing is that they know and understand that sales happens through relationships, and relationships don't just happen through your social media posts.
Yeah.
They don't happen when people go on your website, even if they see a video of you.
Yeah.
Right? So how can you connect with your people? And then
you got to speak their language, right?
You got to speak their language.
You have to connect with them on an emotional level.
And often it requires that you first are connected with yourself.
Yes.
And that's at the heart of what Proffit Coach does.
Yes. It helps you connect with yourself so you can make better connections with your customers.
Exactly. Yes.
That's a really good business model.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Thank you. Yeah. So sales coaching was kind of at the heart of Proffit Coach. And then I really realized that I had all the pieces.
Yeah.
I realized I had all the pieces because other people were saying, you're giving me all the pieces.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah, because I've only been in business since October 2019. The pandemic happened. My business was still successful.
Awesome.
In the pandemic year, right?
Awesome.
I mean, year one was mostly in the pandemic. And then I really realized that getting very deep quickly with people was a skill of mine, and just really helping them connect with themselves, and just through some of the tools and techniques that I've learned and used throughout my HR career with myself, right? Like I've done this work.
Yeah.
Like I've invested work on shifting and working on my money mindset. I worked with a productivity and time management coach because that was something I really struggled with. I have ADHD.
Okay.
Most small business owners also have ADHD. It's why they feel like they don't fit in at a job, because the workplace is not designed for people that are neuroatypical or whatever term you want to use for that, right?
I know when I work a regular person's full-time job, it's soul crushing. It takes the life right out of me every single day, and I cannot wait to just get out and do my thing.
You're going to love my acronym for the word job.
Oh, let's hear it.
Job, not for everybody, but if you're an entrepreneur at heart, a job is a joy optimization blocker.
Oh, I do like that. Joy optimization blocker. That feels so right too.
Yeah. And the thing is that like, if you're a company or like a manager and you're listening to this, because I know not everybody listening is going to be a small business owner, but if you're listening to this and you work in a company and you actually really love your company and you really love your job, because we need people to be in jobs.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We can't have an exodus of everybody leaving their job, which actually that is something that's happening right now, right? And that's going to create problems for our world.
Yes,
but if you are a manager or you have a company that has employees, ask yourself, where am I allowing joy to exist in this company? The reason that I still support and I'm a reseller for Constant Contact's platform is because the culture that I experienced there was the culture I dreamed of creating when I worked in HR.
That's awesome.
And I got to just be in it and experience it. I mean, and sure, I mean, they're still a company, so they have their things, right? I mean, and, I'm sure things are different after the pandemic because I left before the pandemic. But the truth is that, I mean, I still know people that work there and love it there.
Okay.
I mean, where can you find that?
It's very rare.
It's very
rare. In my
rare.
experience, it's very, very rare.
Exactly. So ask yourself, if you are working in a company and you have any people responsibilities, where are you bringing joy? Are you having joy conversations with your employees? Are you asking them, like, what could bring more joy to your work? And if you're an employee and you're sitting scared and you're not speaking up, you're a part of the problem too.
Right. And I think that it comes down to helping understanding the difference between a manager and a leader.
Totally.
I hate managers. I hate them so much. You're a terrible person to me. But a leader, I can actually admire. I can appreciate them, and no matter what it is that they ask me to do, if I don't know how to do it, or if I think it's too hard to do, or if I think it's stupid to do, if a leader asks me to do it, it gets done every single time.
Yeah.
But if a manager asks me to do it, the only thing on my mind is why? Because I need to increase your paycheck so you can buy a nicer car.
Right. Yeah.
There's a big difference between those two people.
And I think one of the major differences between a leader and a manager is that leaders often have vulnerability.
Yeah.
A leader will be honest.
Yeah.
A leader will, kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. A leader will allow an employee to be a whole human. That's one of the things that I really believe in.
They won't experience a problem and then pin it on their people either.
Right. Yeah.
They'll say, okay, well, this guy made this mistake. Why did he make that mistake?
Right. There's
Is
curiosity.
it because of him, or is it really because of me as his leader not being able to teach him the proper way to do things? A leader needs to be able to take responsibility for everything that happens in their little realm.
Yeah. And
everything is their fault.
And I really think that, like, at the core of all of that is, again, I always said that when I started in my career in human resources, that I wanted to really bring the human into it. So my senior year of college is when 9/11 happened. I remember that I was in my undergrad program, and we were studying reductions in forces, like layoffs, right? Okay. That was one of the things we were studying. My dad was working in a middle management position, and he was just sharing with me what they were, doing and how they were doing it, because I was learning about it, and he was actually experiencing it in the real world. And I lived at home, and I commuted to school, so I was not away at college or anything. And I remember on this particular day, I was at home eating breakfast. I knew my dad was actually going to be executing these layoffs that his company had been planning for a while. And the news intervened with the planes, flying into the World Trade Center towers. And I lived near the Philadelphia area, so we were not far from where things were happening. So it was also very frightening. And I remember when my dad came home from work, they had him continue with laying people off. And I would say my dad was a leader, but people were scared. Oh, yeah. And he had a family and a daughter in college, and I am sure that he had some conversations, and then they were like, you need to proceed with this. Yeah. So not only did my dad get personally impacted by this, having to know that this is what's happening in the world, and still saying, here's a box and a pink slip, sorry. But in my mind, when he came home, I saw the pain in his eyes. And I remember thinking, where were the leaders of that organization that were in the decision-making places? And that's where I do want to kind of caveat that whole, blaming managers, because sometimes managers have bad leaders.
Sometimes they do, yeah.
So, think about that from a perspective, right? Everything requires perspective instead of jumping to judgment. Not that that's what you were doing, but I experience this all the time in my HR position. And so, that really just led me from the start of my career, just kind of always wanting to bring the humanity into it. And I always shared with employees during new hire orientation day that story, that, it requires everybody to kind of come together and be open and vulnerable, and know that people make mistakes. I'm sure that some of those people that my dad laid off, they probably look at him in a terrible light still.
Probably.
It was a traumatizing experience for them, I'm sure. And so I just think that we all owe it to ourselves and each other to show up with love and compassion and curiosity. And in order to be a good leader to others, you have to start by leading yourself. And so asking yourself, how am I showing up? Yeah. What habits do I have in my life that are serving me or not serving me? And what do I want to cross off? And start small. You don't have to change everything right away. It's just, what's at the heart of all of it? and realize that like you're actually not in control. Like there's other things going on outside of us in this world. Because if you think that you're all the way in control, you're probably going to have some mental health issues because you're putting it all on your own shoulders.
Absolutely.
You're not alone. There is something bigger than us, I believe. And I think once I started really leaning into this, kind of weaving back to your initial question about how did I come into doing what I'm doing, I realized that I actually was looking outside of me for all of the answers. And I didn't want to just follow the checklist and the prescription for success. That like my success was mine.
Yeah.
Like my path is good. There's a million ways to have success as a business owner. Businesses were successful before social media.
Yeah,
and they'll also be successful without social media.
Yep.
There's people out there that have businesses that are successful that don't even have a social media account.
Right.
So like, don't go down like looking at all the experts of like the prescription of how you're going to do it. The reason Profit Coach was successful is because I just said, you know what, I'm just going to do what I know how to do. And then I'm going to trust that everything else that is going to be needed, any knowledge that I need, any connections that I need, they're going to be placed in front of me.
Right.
I'm going to bump into them.
Yeah.
But I got to be present and aware and out of my own head in order to see those things, in order to notice them, in order to feel the resonance in my body, to be like, hey, is this a connection that makes sense? Because when you feel dissonance there, I did a newsletter not long ago about discerning the difference between discomfort and dissonance, because they're two different things.
And what was the takeaway from that?
I mean, there's a difference, right?
Well, yeah.
Being uncomfortable is different than feeling a dissonance. When we feel a dissonance, that's your gut, right? That's your intuition. That's some higher power trying to get your attention.
Yeah, your spidey sense is tingling kind of thing.
Yes, like, exactly.
There's something off.
The reason that I started my business with only $200 in my pocket is because it felt dissonant to apply for jobs. Okay. And I had been fired from 4 other jobs.
Yeah.
And I had never had any performance issues before 2017.
When you sat there, you thinking about how you need to apply for another job and go back into the same old routine that you've just gotten out of again. It just didn't sit right with you.
Right. Yes. And there were some things that happened related to like job opportunities that, this is a perfect example. Like sometimes we might not understand, like we try to understand too much.
Right.
We try to understand, like, well, why is this showing up? It's not yours to understand, people.
Looking for answers in places where there are none.
Yeah, like sometimes you're trying to make sense of things, and it's like it's not yours to make sense of.
Right.
There were 2 job opportunities that got put in front of me at the end of last year, and my business had kind of slowed down because that's a thing that happens, especially at the end of the year, holidays and things like that, and so. But I was chugging along and there were 2 job opportunities that came across my desk and they didn't make sense. But I was like, when I read the job descriptions, I was like, I'm like the perfect candidate for these jobs. And I wasn't looking for them. Literally, they just like came across my inbox and I happened to click on the email, which by the way, I don't open all my emails. So
I don't know anybody who does.
Yeah. So, the truth is that, there was something that called me to open those emails. Yeah. And what I believe now that I've gone and I applied for those jobs, I actually had interviews. I didn't get those jobs, but I didn't get all stuck in the negative thought pattern of like, I'm not good enough and like my business is going to be struggling forever, which isn't true. It's just a season and it's a thing that happens, and just embrace that it's a part of it. The thing is those things came into place and into play, and I had to explore them because they gave my brain something else to focus on while my belief system is God, while God was actually working out some other things, right? And those other things have come, they're becoming clearer and clearer. And so it's not yours to understand everything. Stop trying.
I couldn't agree more.
Stop trying. You're wasting precious brain space and energy.
Yes, and time.
And time.
All of it. It's all a waste to try to answer every single question. Sometimes you just gotta accept it and say, what, I don't know the answer, and I'm okay with not knowing the answer, and we're just gonna run with it.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just trusting the process and leaning into like you have everything, and anything you don't have, like you're going to get it just when you need it. But if you keep trying and you're gripping onto something, like I want everybody that's listening, like put your hands in a fist and like just hold your hand like this.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So this is how most people walk around the world.
Yeah.
Right? You're holding on. You're holding on to your vision.
You're going to get exhausted real soon.
Even if you're not gripping tightly, you're just holding. That's not how we're designed.
Right.
So now, open your hand.
Yeah.
That feels more easeful.
Yeah.
And also, notice you're open. You can receive things. Things can be placed in your hand. You're open to more. When your hand is closed, there's only a limited amount you can hold on to.
Right.
And so not holding on to being in control, which doesn't always feel safe. So if you have any trauma in your background, like that's a trauma response, is to be in control. And it makes perfect sense. And also, that's not the only way to live your life. And there's changes that you may need to make in your life and in your relationships with yourself and with other people, and where you're placing yourself and the habits that you have, all of those things, so that there is safety. Because there is a lot of safety. There's a lot of goodness in this world. Like even just how you and I met, right? I mean, you were putting yourself out there and for a call for interesting stories and people that wanted to, come and have a conversation. And so there is goodness in this world. And if all you're doing is looking at what you need to control and what the plan is and how to keep yourself safe, you're limiting yourself.
You're going to fall off the rock.
Yeah, and your hands are going to eventually get tired and arthritic because you're gripping so tightly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, anything else that you want to share with anybody?
I mean, I could talk for hours and days on end, but that would be a different paid experience. So.
Right. Well, let's wrap this up. So before we do, though, go ahead and one more time, get your information out there.
Sure.
All your social media, your email, how can people contact you if they would like to get your help?
Thank you for that opportunity. Yeah. So my business is Proffit Coach. So on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, you can find me. Just kind of look for Proffit Coach, Proffit Coach. My name is Allison Proffit. My website is proffitcoach.com, but one of the things that I often tell people is like, don't worry about your website. So my website is a little bit outdated.
That's fine.
Most people that hire me, they come and they're saying, hey, I want to update my website. I'm like, cool. What did you think about my website? And they're like, oh, I've never been to it. It's like, okay. So you can go check out Proffit Coach. It does have a little bit about some of my philosophies. And then the Soulful Entrepreneur Summit community, the website for that is at getsoulfulsuccess.com.
Okay.
So we do that summit once a year, but there's events that happen throughout the year, and details on the podcast that I'm currently doing can be found there as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity, Brian,
to sit
and have this conversation.
It was my pleasure.
Connect, yeah.
I very much enjoyed it, Allison.
Yeah, me too. Thank you guys so much.
Allison Proffit, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of the Best Adventure Podcast. I'm Brian Sherwood. I want to tell you to live your best adventure, like always, and we'll catch you next week. See you then.